What is going on, everyone? It is the Fantasy Kingpins back with the 11th installment of the podcast. Today we have Pat and Jesse on the show. How are we doing today, fellas?
I'm riding high. The Mets playing well. I'm feeling good. I'm ready.
Yeah, I got rid of my little scrubble going on my chin. I feel like a free man. Just had some really high quality pizza, so it's been a good day so far.
You love to hear that. We've got some big news today to start the show, and it's about one of my personal favorite players. So Damian Williams has decided to opt out of the 2020 NFL season. And Damian Williams is not one of my personal favorite players, but it opens the door for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be an elite fantasy asset. And with no threat to take away touches, how early will you be targeting Edwards-Helaire?
I'm probably gonna be looking at. He's pretty much an easy RB1 at this point, but he's still a rookie. In previous years, we've it's been shoved in our face that rookies can do fine, and I see him going right now for me. He's like RB8, RB9. Not going to be too much of a factor on the run game, but for PPR, you don't even really need that. He's not going to really have any competition, but there's a lot more proven backs that there's like 5 or 6 that I definitely take over him, and then it becomes iffy after that.
I'm a little bit more bullish than you, Pat. I put him in the 5 or 6 position. I think that I'm taking him at the late mid first round. And I feel really good about him. He's just on a great offense, and watching him play last year, he just seemed like an absolute stud. And he's kind of in the Kareem Hunt position, and I just think he's got the green light to succeed here.
Yeah, I've been all aboard the Clyde hype train since the draft. I've talked about it a bunch on the show, and I'm just really excited. I hope you guys were able to land him before this news, as I think his value is going to skyrocket. Currently, he was going in like the third round. Now I expect him late first, maybe even mid first, and then definitely he's going to be gone by the early second. But Pat, you mentioned a good point with rookie running backs. We've seen success. Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Kamara. A lot of rookies have seen a lot of success, and in the Chiefs offense, I don't see why Clyde Edwards-Helaire can't see that same success. So yeah, it's certainly exciting. I'm just happy Damian Williams is out of the picture. I think we'll see a future star bloom in Kansas City this year. But to get on to the episode, we've got a little start bench cut action. So if you didn't watch last episode, I'm going to give the Kingpins 3 players, and they're going to decide which player to start, which player to bench, and which to cut. So we're going to start with the tight end position, and the 3 names are Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews, and Darren Waller. What are we thinking? I'm going to hand it off to Pat to start us out here.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this. In Kansas City, rookie running backs may have a slower time starting. I know Kareem Hunt had an easy time when he had that away game week 1 against the Patriots, but if they have a set of early home games for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he might have to get used to that Kansas City barbecue the hard way. He might be stuck in the locker room before the game, might not get out there by like mid-second quarter, so that might be a concern. With Andrews, Ertz, and Waller, this was a tough one. But one stat stuck out to me. Mark Andrews had 467 snaps last year, and Ertz and Waller had well over 900, and Andrews was still up there in the top 5 with them. So I'm starting Mark Andrews, and he's going to be on an elite offense next year. The Ravens had the most points of any team last year, and they added Devin Duvernay, they added J.K. Dobbins. They're going to be absolutely electric. Hollywood Brown is still getting better. Miles Boykin's still getting better. There's no slowing this offense. And Mark Andrews was targeted the most in the red zone of any player on the Ravens last year, and that means points in fantasy. So I got to take him as my start. I'll let you guys say who you're starting.
Yeah, I'm with you, Pat. I'm totally with you. Hayden Hurst has been dealt. It's just going to open up some more targets for him, and Lamar is going to be throwing more this season. He's talked about it. The coaches have talked about it, and with Andrews, you're just getting Lamar's most reliable target, and I think that's inherently valuable. And I'm going with that as my start, no doubt.
I'm surprised we're all in agreement here. I thought there'd definitely be some Ertz takers, but no, I'm starting Andrews as well. I think, as you mentioned, Hayden Hurst being out of the picture, the volume is definitely going to increase. Like obviously, his efficiency was pretty unreal, and I'd expect that to regress a little bit, but the volume's definitely going to increase. He actually led the league in targets per route run. So I'm really excited to see what he can do this year with hopefully an uptick in snaps. As for my bench, I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles tight end Zach Ertz. He averaged 14.4 points per game last year, which led the three names I listed. But he was Wentz's only healthy top target outside of Dallas Goedert. With a lot of these bigger names coming back, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, and then the new rookie additions like Jalen Reagor, I think the ball will be spread out around a little more, and that's why I'm going to give the edge to Andrews. But I still like Ertz a little bit more than Waller, who I am unfortunately cutting, just because Ertz has a much better track record. We've only seen it one season from Waller, so I just think Ertz is the safer option here.
One thing I am concerned about, considering yards per target, last year Waller had 9.8 yards per target, Ertz had 6.8. So I mean, Ertz dominated both of them in targets, but I don't know. I mean, Dallas Goedert is his niche is growing within that offense, and then they just added Jalen Reagor. So I don't know if Ertz is going to have the same stranglehold on the offense that he's had, but I have to I have to sit Ertz over Waller. You're right that Waller has to prove himself a little more to edge out Ertz, who just 2 years ago had like one of the greatest tight end seasons in fantasy and football history. So I have no choice but to sit Ertz here.
I know Jesse is a big Waller fan, so I'm kind of interested in to see what he's going to say here. I'll let you say that.
I am a Waller fan and owner, but I think I'm going to have to make a first on the Peanut Gallery Kingpins podcast by being all in agreement. I don't know if that happened before, but I've got to cut Waller and bench Ertz. It's just there's more question marks surrounding Waller. They brought in Ruggs, Lynn Bowden, Brian Edwards, and even Jason Witten, who was able, and I know you're laughing,
Skunk man.
But Jason Witten actually capped Blake Jarwin's value last year in Dallas. Jarwin had like less than a 50% snap percentage last year. And I'm not saying that Jarwin is on the same level as Waller the Baller, but I'm just saying I think there's a lot more uncertainty there, and Ertz is just like a reliable guy. He's been a top 5 tight end the last 3 seasons in PPR, and I think you go with the safer pick there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a fair point though, because Jason Witten was the guy who showed Dak Prescott all the best strip clubs in Dallas. So I don't know if that target volume will carry over to Oakland. One also key stat: Ertz has the 4th easiest tight end schedule. Waller has the 29th easiest. So Waller's gonna face some tougher coverages than Ertz will. That made the sitting Ertz a lot easier for me too.
We're also not sure about who's going to be the starting quarterback. I know that they've said that they're going to go one way, but there's some competition there in Las Vegas, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top between Carr and Mariota.
Yeah, Pat, I like the strip club reference with Jason Witten. I don't think he's gonna have those same bonds with Derek Carr, so that could be a very valuable little tidbit from Pat. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. And the three names I'm going to give you today are Adam Thielen, Kenny Galladay, and Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm expecting a little bit more debate in this one, a little more disagreement. So I'm going to throw it over to Jesse.
All right, yeah, I'll start off. I am starting Kenny Galladay. He is just consistently good. Like he scored over 14 PPR points in 11 out of 16, despite catching from Driscoll and Blow for half the season. He's just like a solid guy with Stafford back. I expect him to continue being one of the best young receivers around. And the team is just not going to be very good, you know, and that bodes well for them passing it a lot. And I think it bodes well for Galladay in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want another consensus, but unfortunately, I have Galladay also. When Stafford was the quarterback last year, he was the PPR wide receiver 11, and I think that could only improve this year. Galladay is, I mean, Juju's young also, but I think Galladay is just in a great passing situation. I think it's ridiculous how Damon Harrison is not on a team right now. Snacks is not on the team. He's not on the Lions should have re-signed him by now. But yeah, their defense is going to struggle. Um, I'm going to have to sit Adam Thielen, which might ruffle some feathers, but I think that's just the safer pick right now, considering, well, Big Ben is 37 right now, and I do not want to rely. We're considering right now these three wide receivers. Hypothetically, we picked a running back in round one, and now we're on the turnaround. We're thinking who's going to be our low end wide receiver one or high end wide receiver two, and I don't want it to be Juju. His targets were pretty much cut in half last year with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. Um, Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have the arm strength I think that he had 2 or 3 years ago, and he's just been sitting on the couch eating a bunch of. He's been taste testing potato chips, and he's been getting paid for it. So that's not true, but I think it might be. And I think that'll just make his passing game only worse.
Well, Pat, I'm going to agree with you on Thielen over Juju, but I actually have Thielen as my start. So I have Thielen over Galladay and Juju.
Wow.
And I talked about it 2 episodes ago on why I think Thielen's primed for like a big bounce back. So if you want a little more insider information, go tune into that. But I really love Thielen. It just comes down to the volume for me. Galladay's he had 65 catches last season, whereas Thielen, you'll see him he's a pretty safe bet for like 90 plus every year. He's usually seeing like 140, 150 targets, and that's the volume I kind of want as a wide receiver one. But I do have Galladay over Juju, and to me, it's just we saw Stafford go down, and Galladay was still able to produce. While Juju, when Roethlisberger was hurt, he was not able to do what Galladay managed to do. So that's why I have Galladay at B. If I'm drafting a wide receiver that's leading my team, I just feel much more confident with Kenny Galladay than Juju Smith-Schuster.
So what I'll say on this is that I had Galladay as starter, and I was really debating between Juju and Thielen between the bench or the cut. And what I'm going to say is I think it really depends on how your team is structured. I think if you've got a reliable wide receiver that you picked like earlier, then like a Julio or something like that, then I think you can go Juju. And so I'm going to put bench Juju because I'm assuming that you're going to have a receiver. But if you don't, and this is the first wide receiver that you're picking off the board, it's way too much risk to have Juju. So I guess I would go with Thielen. But I just think that Juju in general, he's going to have a better year. He has to, you know? Like, this is a make or break season. There are reports swirling already that this could be his last season in Pittsburgh, and he's going to get not only more targets this year, but he's also going to get more quality targets, and that's something that really matters. He's moving back into his natural position in the slot. I think he's going to return back to form. I also like Thielen, but I think with Diggs gone, yes, he'll get more targets, but also he's going to draw more attention from elite corners that would have been drawn to Diggs. So I think it's kind of a two-edged sword there, and it's a little bit of uncertainty.
I agree that wait, what was the point that you just made about the corners? Who was that, for Juju or for
Thielen, like I'm saying that
Yeah.
Diggs would draw like the best corner on the team. And
Okay, I could see that. I mean, on the Vikings, after Thielen, there's not really, besides Kyle Rudolph, there's not really any proven targets. But
Andre Sharp.
I think Thielen's volume is why I got to push him over Juju. I mean, Juju's got to come. They just added Chase Claypool, who's going to be on the outside, but he's still going to be racking in some targets. And then I love James Washington. Tommy, I know you love Deontay Johnson. And Eric Ebron, he's a hungry hippo. He loves to eat up those touchdowns, and he will steal a couple of those red zone TDs from Juju.
Eric Ebron is very, very good comparison with the hippo. I do like that. I feel like he is, if you had to pick an animal that he embodies, I would also go with hippo.
A beautiful hippo at that. A beautiful hippo. Eric, if you're listening, you're beautiful.
But let's wrap this up with the running back position. And we're talking three guys, three big names. We've got Chris Carson, Melvin Gordon, and Le'Veon Bell. Three of the bigger names at the running back position, all going around the fourth round, I would say. Since you guys kicked off the last two, I'll give us the start here. I'm going to start Chris Carson, Seattle Seahawks running back. I know they added Carlos Hyde, but he was pretty quiet last season, but he did finish as the number 12 running back on a points per game basis. And to me, I don't love any of these three names, but I like Carson the best. I feel like with Gordon and this new Broncos offense with Philip Lindsay there, it's a little, I don't know, his role's kind of up in the air. And then Le'Veon Bell in the Jets offense, I mean, Adam Gase led offense is just, it's not a quality situation. So I am going to start Chris Carson. I'll bench Melvin Gordon because of the passing work. I feel like he's pretty guaranteed to get. And then I am going to cut Le'Veon Bell. And I love Le'Veon Bell as a talent, but the New York Jets offense, I just don't know how they're going to produce a good running back.
Well, that's honestly interesting that you're cutting Le'Veon Bell, because that's my start. He had 66 receptions last year, the most of any of these running backs. Chris Carson had a huge jump in receptions, but he only had 37. The Jets have the third most improved offensive line of the offseason. They added Mekhi Becton, who was one of 5 offensive line additions. And I think with Bell's workload, his yards per carry was absolute shit last year, but he's a man on a mission. If you look on his Twitter, and I know that NFL players making Twitter promises never really means anything. We've seen it with Antonio Brown.
OBJ does it every year.
Yeah. I mean, it's always like, this is my year, but I truly believe it for Le'Veon Bell. This is a guy that I would go all in on. He's a guy that if I am considering drafting a wide receiver with my second pick in the second round, and I know that I could get Le'Veon on the turnaround as my RB1, I'd be fine with that. He was a high-end RB2 last year with a shit yards per carry because he gets so much receiving work. He was almost top 10 in rush attempts also. And I think with all that work, you can't ignore that. And with this offensive line, he's only going to get better. This is his revenge tour. He's an easy start for me.
I'm rooting for it. Of course, I've always been a big Le'Veon fan, but I'll let you jump in here, Jess.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Tom. I'm starting Carson. He's just he's sneaky, like you said. He's sneaky, and he's a workhorse back, and he's on a good team.
Definitely the best team out of the three.
Yeah, and good team means good for running backs. Like that's just the formula. So I think he has the best opportunity to succeed. He's on a good team, and he'll have positive game script. So I'm going with him as my start, and then I'm gonna bench Bell. I like that you mentioned Mekhi Becton because I think that's going to be a big piece for the Jets O-line. And I think Bell is just due for some positive touchdown regression. He had only 3 rushing touchdowns last year. 3. That has to go up this year. So he has the opportunity. So I'm benching him. And then I'm going to cut Gordon because there's just so many problems that I see with Gordon. This is going to be controversial. I'm not sure that Melvin Gordon is really that good of a football player. Like, I've watched him, and he's just not that good. Like, he really isn't, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys want to interject and make comments.
I'm going to shockingly agree with you. I always felt like Austin Eckler was a better player, and that was finally proven last year. I mean, I don't know if you can say proven, but his yards per carry is always down. I don't really think he's that talented. I do like his situation better than Bell, which is why I benched him. But I don't know. I'm kind of on board with you. I don't think Melvin Gordon's that good of a football player.
This may not bode well for Jonathan Taylor, but usually when you're in that Wisconsin offense, you got some big maulers that you get to run behind. Monte Ball came into the league. He was on his high horse. He was like, oh, I dominated the Big Ten. So now I'm just going to be an easy top 10 running back in this league for 10 years. And he was out the door in Denver after a quick 2 years. I don't know if that'll be the same with Jonathan Taylor. He's got that skill set that I don't think either of those two guys have had. But I got to cut Gordon, but it's mainly because of what Carson has done, not because of what Gordon hasn't done. Carson is tied for third in the league in the past 2 years with most forced missed tackles. He had 41 red zone rushing attempts last year, and the second most rushing attempts on the team was someone who had 8, and he was 5th in the NFL in rush attempts. So he also has that volume that Bell has, but I don't think Bell being on a bad team really hurts him because of how much receiving work he's going to get. They're going to be behind a lot, and I think his receiving floor is very high because of that.
Well, one thing I want to say, I might disagree a little bit with Gordon. Well, I'm with you that you're cutting him, right, Pat?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to also add on and say that there's really no guarantees in this Broncos offense. You know, they are actually stacked. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed, just like across the board. They're one of the most underrated, like, talented teams at skill positions. And I think that doesn't really bode well. And, like, Philip Lindsay, as an undrafted player, came out and rushed for over 5 yards per carry and beat out the guy that they drafted, I think, in, like, was it the 3rd round or something like that, Royce Freeman?
Royce Freeman, 3rd round pick.
And so it shows that they just play who's the best player. And Philip Lindsay has been playing well in the last few years. And I think that he's lurking still.
I actually have intel from a current Penn State student, Matthew Nelson. He's told me that KJ Hamler will have the 2nd most fantasy points of any Denver Broncos receiver, tight ends included. Noah Fant, get out of here. Jerry Jeudy, get out of here. It's Cortland, then it's KJ. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's what Matthew Nelson said. If you wanna get mad at anyone, get mad at Matthew Nelson. He's anonymous, but he's Matthew Nelson.
I gotta disagree with Matthew Nelson on this one. I'm gonna take Jeudy over Hamler. But let's wrap up the show with some sleepers. We're looking at the Fantasy Pros rankings, and we're each taking a guy outside of the top 100. And these players might win you a fantasy league. I don't know. These are some guys that the experts are sleeping on, and we think provide great value. So, Pat, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you 4 names, and then I'll tell you how they're related. So there's Christian McCaffrey, there's Austin Eckler, there's James White, and there's Duke Johnson. Those are the top 4 running backs in PPR points per touch last year. So that's why I'm having Duke Johnson as my sleeper this year. He had only 44 catches last year as a receiving back, but Hopkins vacates 150 targets from last year, and Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb are on their last leg, so they're not going to eat all of that up. David Johnson, as we know, is a very fragile person. He's got a great smile, but he's a fragile person. He's had 3.7 yards per carry or less in his last 2 seasons. So I don't know if the Texans will be able to rely on him all too much. And I think this is the most valuable handcuff in the league. If you want anyone, I'd want Duke Johnson.
I don't know about the most valuable handcuff in the league.
Who comes to mind first when you think of
Kareem
someone
Hunt.
valuable?
I mean, I don't know if you consider
Okay.
Kareem Hunt a handcuff.
Yeah, that is kind of like a 2-headed monster. But
Yeah. So maybe that's not a handcuff. So maybe you're
fine. I'll give it top. I'll give it top 3.
But I like my running back a little bit better, and I don't know if you consider him a handcuff because the Ravens really use just a multitude of running backs. But my sleeper is J.K. Dobbins, rookie running back for the Baltimore Ravens, and he's like my guy this year. If I'm taking a shot on like a guy in the later rounds who could be a stud. The past 2 seasons, Baltimore has led the league in rushing attempts. And both years they were averaging over 30 per game, like 33 and then 36 last year. And not only do they run the ball a lot, but they're pretty damn good at it. Pro Football Focus graded Baltimore as having the second best offensive line in the NFL in 2019. So if J.K. Dobbins is able to get the touches, I don't see why he wouldn't be able to have success. And then there's the injury factor. If Ingram does go down, Dobbins could be a stud. But I see a world where Dobbins could win the job from Ingram if he proves to be a more talented player. And they spent some pretty good draft capital on Dobbins. So I don't think it's impossible. At Ohio State, Dobbins rushed for 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. And before the draft, a lot of people saw him as like a top 2 to 3 running back. Instead, he went like 4. I think he was the 4th or 5th running back taken off. I think he was 5th. He was the 5th running back taken off the board, which was a big surprise to many. But I'm in this offense. I think he could become a steal if things shake out like they potentially could.
Well, it is my pleasure to end off the show with the best sleeper in fantasy football. This guy is criminally underrated. Deshaun Jackson, and it pains me to say this because I'm a Giants fan. But oh god.
And it's a line drive kick. Jackson bobbles it and now has to try and recover. Deshaun Jackson gets a block! Are you kidding? Deshaun Jackson!
Why'd you have to do this, Tommy? That's Matt Dodge's fault. You should have gotten Matt Dodge on the show to say people to us or something.
I had 2 Giants fans on the show. Deshaun Jackson was mentioned. It had to be done.
And I get to see that highlight at least 3 times a year, if not more. The big companies love to circulate that. If we could just cancel out that, I would be willing to cancel out seeing the OBJ catch every year for not seeing the Djax return every year. I'd be willing to make that deal. But just going back into the fantasy football, Deshaun Jackson is at PPR player 154 ADP. And that's ridiculous because when you draft him, he's going to be slotting in as a wide receiver 2 for as long as he's healthy. Now, I know last year that didn't work out so well for him. He had an amazing game, 154 yards with 2 TDs, but then he got hurt and that was it pretty much for the season. But he's a guy that you're getting at just ridiculous value. It's just simple numbers. He's worth the risk. You're barely paying anything for him. And right now he's wide receiver 59. And I think like he stays healthy. And I know that's a big if, but let's say he just plays 13 games or 11 games, like he's returning value on what you're spending on him. He's going to be a wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3. And it seems like he's got a genuine connection with Wentz. One other point is that Alshon Jeffrey's not going to be ready for the start of the season. And so you have Djax stepping in. He's the number 1 guy. And it's just exciting, and it's just crazy value that you're getting from him. So
I do got to say, Jess, I was there to witness his one game last year in Washington, and it was electric. It was great. And Deshaun Jackson might not be a guy who at the end of the year is going to be like a top 30 guy, but he will be a valuable asset to your fantasy team, especially as like a flex play. He can win you a week, especially on a bad when he has a bad going up against a bad defense. Plug him into your lineup. He puts up like 32 on like 2 70-yard catches, and he's going to win you a week. Like, I love it as a sleeper, and you're talking like a 15th, 14th round pick. Yeah, why not?
Jesse, did you have this decided before or after Marquise Goodwin's decision?
So that's like another big like factor into it. That Marquise Goodwin, who was another deep threat that was signed by the Eagles, is opting out of the season for family reasons. Totally respect that. But that just means more Djax, and he's gonna terrorize my Giants this year. I can just feel it. And I'm scared.
If we have a season.
Yeah, if we have a season, we'll see about that. So, yeah, that's 3 sleepers. We got our Deshaun Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, and
Dookie.
I almost forgot. Yeah, Duke Johnson. If you stayed with us till the end, thank you for tuning into the show. We will be back next Wednesday with another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.